you'll see rapid weight loss, and then there'll be a big crash and it will massively affect your mindset, and then you'll probably will give up.
The average woman has been on diets for 17 years of her life.
Insane.
You're on it, you're off it, you're on it, you're off it. So we thought it would be helpful to cut the BS.
Let's go.
Weight Watchers.
Oprah, going on to weight loss medications shows some fundamental flaws. Like, I just think like a company of that size had an impact on the world, and it would have probably fundamentally changed the way we think about food. It just hasn't been the case.
Keto and low carb.
This roller coaster, not the best for health outcomes.
Intermittent fasting.
The hungry judge effect. Adrenaline goes up, spike a bit of cortisol, hungry and agitated.
Whole food plant-based diet saw an average reduction in their BMI of 4 points.
Shit, that's huge. This is all we keep saying on this podcast. Whole foods. A diet by definition is just the foods that we habitually eat. So we're all on a diet till the day we die. So all you have to do. Hi, I'm Jaymie.
And I'm Stacey.
And this is the Body Smart Podcast.
We are women's weight loss experts, and we are on a mission to empower you to feel in control of your health and your weight for life. And one of the main struggles that we actually hear from clients and from women on social media all the time is exactly how to do that, because there are so many different diets and plans out there. It's impossible to know where to start. I mean, the average woman apparently has been on diets, if you added it all up, for 17 years of her life.
Insane.
Yeah.
That's like not even just like from 20 to 37. That's 17 years of dieting throughout their lives.
Yeah, and so most people aren't 20 to 37 constant, which is kind of worse because you're on it, you're off it, you're on it, you're off it. And apparently that's 60 plus diets by the age of 45 for the average person, which is frustrating, and like it's why we do what we do, because I've been there, you've seen your family members go through that roller coaster of emotions, and there is a better way. But we also know that if you go on the internet and you type in top diet for weight loss, you're going to get pages of results, and they're all going to claim to be the best. So we thought it would be helpful to cut the BS and work through the top 5 and let you know the exact lowdown. So we are going to be putting under the microscope today intermittent fasting, Weight Watchers, the Mediterranean diet, plant-based and vegan, and keto and low carb options. So by the end of today's episode, you should be able to pick and mix which ones might be good for you, which ones might not be. And most importantly, we're going to be telling you how and if they are actually any good for weight loss.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Yeah.
First up, intermittent fasting.
The good old one. Yeah.
It's a love-hate, isn't it? You either love it or you hate it.
You either love it or you hate it. And, so your through line you'll see with all of these diets is they can work, or these diet strategies, should we say. And intermittent fasting is one of those ones where some people are just like, hey, I've been skipping breakfast for most of my life and I don't really mind it. Sure, you know what I mean? You put a food rule in place. I'm going to start eating at 12 p.m. I'm going to finish eating at 8 p.m. That's going to be my fed window, and I'm going to calorie control in that window. And for some people, they find it easier. And then for others, they absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
I think you're in the latter
I'm
camp.
in the
Yeah. I'm in the hate camp.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where, like you said, if your natural hunger rhythm is not there in the morning, and it's not a massive hardship to push that back till midday, then this is going to feel like maybe a bonus for you, and like having some structure saying like, this is when I will eat. Some people really need those boundaries, and it's helpful. Other people like me, it just makes me count down till midday and feel starving all morning.
Yeah.
The other way of doing it as well is not necessarily 16-8. So some people have like a more flexible window. So they might say, well, I'm going to start at 10 and then eat for 10
Yeah,
hours.
and there's loads of apps as well you can use. So like when you decide if you finish your last meal, you can hit sort of start on that app, and then you can go to 16. So you can do that. Your body does have a like inbuilt circadian rhythm. So if you're constantly sort of changing it, or you're used to a routine and then change it, just don't be surprised if like you're like 2 hours out from when you're supposed to eat on that 16 hours and you're like starving and aggy because your body's used to having those times. Like we spoke about it before, haven't we? The hungry judge effect.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's literally like people just before lunch get prosecuted higher, and it's literally because your adrenaline goes up, you spike a bit of cortisol, and it's like, I'm hungry, I'm agitated, it's like, let's get this over. It's guilty. Yeah. So yeah, like intermittent fasting, it has its place. It's a diet strategy that some people use. Some people use it for health as well. If it helps you calorie control better, then that's great. And if it doesn't, and you just hate your life, then not. All I say, because a lot of people are curious, and there's nothing wrong with that, is give it a try. So if you are really curious, is intermittent fasting going to help? All I say is like do it for 2 weeks, because it'll take about 5 to 7 days, maybe even 10 days for you to just get used to it. And in that last like 4 or 5 days, if you're still just like really like just hating it and just clock countdown all the time, then it's probably not for you. If you're someone who like does it after like 10 days and you're like, that's pretty easy actually. I don't even have to think about breakfast in the morning. It's one less meal to think about. I get to have a bigger lunch. Great. So that's kind of my advice on it.
That some people like, don't they?
Yeah.
That they can have bigger meals when they do eat, and they enjoy that like full feeling.
Yeah. That's like, I quite like that when, maybe not so much anymore, but definitely of an evening, it's called like a gastric stretch. So it's just your stomach expanding a little bit, and it does make you feel like that little bit more full, and you get that like warmness in your stomach. And yeah, if you're having like 1,000 calorie lunch, then yeah, you're gonna be able to get bigger meals.
Yeah. And I just wanted to highlight as well, there is another type of fasting which isn't necessarily how many hours in a day, but the 5-2 diet kind of falls into this premise as well, where 5 days of the week you eat, in inverted commas, regular calories, and then 2 days of the week you eat like 500 calories.
Yeah.
I have done that one. 500 calories is not a lot. And so some people like it because only 2 days of a week you feel like you're having to worry about food. The other days of the week you supposedly eat normal. But as we know, being in a calorie deficit generally requires like some eye on your food intake. It isn't going to just naturally happen. And if you massively underate today, there's a good chance your body will try and compensate tomorrow. So unless you are tracking your food or keeping an eye on your calories, this isn't necessarily a foolproof strategy for weight loss. Yeah.
It's. I think that's like they're going to be the through line through all of this. Like, intermittent fasting will work for weight loss if you're in a calorie deficit. Like, that's it. So you can't just go like some people, and we're talking about 60 and 8. You could do 20 hours of fasting, 2 hours of eating. But if you eat too many calories in those 2 hours, you still won't lose weight, or you could even gain weight.
Yeah.
So it's a calorie control is going to be the principle and the through line throughout all of this. But just for some people, having a rule of when to eat or having a long time of fasting can really help. And I think just to put it out there as well, like, everybody fasts. So just like, unless you're somebody that's getting up in the middle of the night and eating throughout the night, which if anyone didn't know, like, bodybuilders did this for years. So they would get up and have like a protein shake in the middle of the night, and I've gone to bed on like protein IVs and stuff. Yeah. The thing I actually find fascinating about bodybuilding is like, they will take everything to the absolute human extreme for just like the slight improvements. But yeah, most people aren't getting up in the middle of the night and having munchies at 3 a.m. Well, I hope not.
Unless you're breastfeeding, which is what I found out. I just ate all day, all night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's very different. You know what I mean? It's a unique season in sort of your life. It's not probably happening on a normal day to day. But yeah, all of us will fast. So from whenever you finish your last meal to whenever you eat, you'll go into a fasted state. For some people, that might be like 8-9 hours if you're eating quite close to when you go to bed and when you wake up. For some people, you might already realize, hey, I'm already doing 10 hours of fasting. That's what breakfast is, breaking the fast. So if you want to extend that out, an extra hour, an extra 2 hours, go up to 16. Like I said, give it a try. There's nothing wrong with experimenting and going, that's not for me. I use fasting like intermittently if I'm like maybe want to try and lose a bit of weight, or I've overdone it on the weekend. I use it as a form of calorie restriction, but I use it as a tool, as a now and then, instead of a way of living.
I think, like you said, it is helpful in some ways, because if you know you've got a habit that isn't helpful, like, for example, you always have a mid-morning snack that you don't really need, it's just a habit. Or you always eat and pick after dinner, that's just a habit. Having a rule where it's like a hard cut-off, like, I don't eat before this time or after that time. It's like that old myth of, like, you shouldn't eat after 6 p.m. or you shouldn't have carbs after 6 p.m. People did lose weight because it stopped those habits.
Well, yeah, you're slamming back the tub of Ben and Jerry's at 8 p.m., not 8 a.m. You know what I mean? So, like, if you put that rule in, like, I'm not going to eat after 6, well, if you probably just looked at your dietary habits, you were probably eating like 1,000 calories after 6 p.m. So you stopped doing that and you went into a calorie deficit.
Yeah.
So again, it's not saying that you can't eat after 6. It's just saying, like, calories are king and you have to monitor them.
Some people really do well with rules.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, some people really do not do well with too many restrictions and rules, and it causes them to rebound or self-sabotage. You're going to know if you're listening to this, like which camp you fall in.
Yeah.
And if you don't know, give it a go. So what does the research show? It shows actually it can work, but you do need to monitor your calories for it to elicit weight loss. There was one review in 2020 of 27 intermittent fasting trials, which found there was a weight loss that varied from like 1% body weight to 13% body weight using intermittent fasting. But generally speaking, across the board, the people who just did calorie restriction and ate at any time of the day got the same results. So this is what I thought was a really nice summary in another study was intermittent fasting is valid, but not superior.
There we go. I think that sums it up.
Yeah. So that's intermittent fasting if you want to give it a go. It's not going to do any harm. But just be aware that it might not be for you or it might be for you. So next we have Weight Watchers, which frankly, if you haven't heard of Weight Watchers, where have you been all your life?
You've been living under a rock, yeah.
It's been around so long, your grandma probably did it. And I know for me, I had the little Weight Watchers book when I was 13 years old.
Yeah, that just shocked me when you were telling me that before.
Yeah, I was like going into the school canteen, figuring out how many points were in my jacket potato. And most of us, if you didn't do it yourself, you probably watched your mum do it. You probably knew what points were, or you've seen like Weight Watchers products in the supermarket and they've got the little point thing in the corner.
Yeah.
So it's just like a part of the diet landscape. However, it has evolved over the years, and I know we were talking about earlier, they've changed the way that they allocate points recently. There's now 0 points, which is kind of like Slimming World, which is another one of those kind of old school big boys of the diet industry, where apparently you can eat as much as you want of 0 point foods. So that's things like fruit, veg, and lean meat. So things like chicken breast falls in there, fish, eggs, tofu, and even whole wheat pasta. Have as much whole wheat pasta as you like, apparently, with this new 0 points thing. So there's those things to us as people who really help people achieve weight loss. We're like, that's a little bit mad. Probably not so great. However, I would say the new addition of points on the plus side, it is encouraging more healthy choices. So the points are allocated based on the calorie content, yes, but also the protein content is now considered saturated fat and sugar. So the points aren't just calorie based anymore. Yeah. They are trying to help you have a more filling diet. So the wild thing for me on both of this is one, like this, we know there's no free foods. You know what I mean? You can't eat whole grain pasta or any food and say like, oh, it's got no calories in it, because that's a recipe. Even though some of those foods that they've mentioned are probably more satiating than others, you can still easily overconsume on any of those foods, especially if you add a bit of sauce on them or something else that can really increase the palatability. That's one part of like, right, okay, that's just like bad practice. And then secondly, if you're going to go to the effort of learning a system, why not just learn the actual system, which is to understand calories, macros, fiber, sugar, and just actually learn about food? Because it's one of those skills, like once you know, you know. So like, why invest that time into learning a skill that's not quite right, quite complex, even though they'll sell it as it's easier, and then just still be confused at the end of like, why I don't fully know what I should be doing. Yeah, and I think that rings back to one of our editors, Jess Shed. She's always grown up thinking that crunchy chocolate bars are healthy because they're only 3 points.
That's wild. Yeah.
But it does create these, because you're learning this whole different system. You're creating these moral, like, what's the word? Like, good versus bad lists of food.
Someone well did the
based
same.
on this made-up system of points. When actually, like you say, you could just assess it for what it is. Like, it's a chocolate bar. It's high in calories. It's high in fat. But you know what?
Tastes good. Yeah.
I'm going to have one today because everything else I ate was okay.
Yeah.
So I do think it adds a layer of complexity that you just don't need to. On the plus side, though, it has actually got loads of people that swear by it because of the accountability. And they used to just be in person. Again, a bit of a love-hate thing. You either really thrive off having to go and stand in front of everyone else and talk about how much weight you've lost that week, or hate that. But now it's got an app as well, and that accountability through the app is really helpful for people. So there are positives to it. What I think we should definitely mention, though, is Oprah has been,
was, yeah,
the face of Weight Watchers nearly 10 years. So she bought a 10% share of the company in 2015. And that saw the shares like skyrocket because everybody loved Oprah Winfrey. But she struggled with her weight through all of it. She's also now come out and said that she's used weight loss medications. So you've got to ask yourself, the person that's that invested, they bought some of the company, they've tried it for nearly 10 years and they're still finding that's not the answer. It isn't the magic solution to me as an outsider.
Yeah, so the stuff that I looked at when she first invested in it was, hey, like she's invested in it because she knows it's a good business model. Most people like go on Weight Watchers, come off Weight Watchers, rebound, gain the weight, go back on Weight Watchers. And it's this never ending cycle that we've seen since our grandparents were around. So like, hey, good business model, worth investing in. Obviously being a proponent of coming in that and then wanting to see success and then obviously trying those systems and probably having all the extra help that Oprah has available to her and still not seeing success shows some fundamental flaws in her becoming successful with losing weight and keeping it off. And yeah, going on to weight loss medications, I'm pretty sure Weight Watchers supply them now because
They do actually, yeah. So they bought out a company which is now called Weight Watchers Clinic so that they can prescribe weight loss medications and provide support alongside that.
Which, again, it's not against weight loss medication, it's when the benefits outweigh the risks. I think it's definitely the right step for some people and can see a lot of success. But for the way it's being marketed and big companies like Weight Watchers and Noom and jumping on it as well, you can just tell it's a money grab and it's just like jumping on it. How can we increase our market share? How can we sell this drug and market? Because it's not being marketed like the way we would see it being marketed. Like this is a last resort, sort of needs must. It's being marketed as like, hey, like, anyone can use this to lose that this is the answer.
Yeah. Although they have still got their flagship program, which, as I said, it does work for some people, and there are studies out there that have shown that people are more likely to lose weight with it than trying to do it on their own because there is structure. There is, as much as there are flaws with the point system, there is some logic behind it, and it does try and encourage whole foods now with the new system. More protein and fibre and voluminous foods. So if you are eating a standard American diet, lots of processed foods, and you go on to Weight Watchers, you are going to be forced to try and improve the quality of your diet.
It's tough. I personally struggle with this sometimes because if I speak to most coaches, we can all have different methodologies of what we're trying to do, but most of us are trying to just get people fitter, healthier, happier, and in a better place. So I'm like, okay, I don't fully agree with all your methods, but I think from a value standpoint, we're trying to achieve the same outcome. I'm going to try and approach that with some of these bigger companies like Weight Watchers. And it's like, right. And they have success stories. Of course they do, because of the volume of people that go there. Of course, there's going to be some outliers and winners, but they can have such an impact on, especially Weight Watchers. They've had an impact on the world, and it's when you start to look at their methodologies and you could go like, oh, are you just trying to achieve the same outcome here? Are you just trying to get people fitter, healthier, happier? Or is this just like an overly complex system that has worked for some people who are your big, supporters, but for the majority of people, it's not serving them, and you're selling them shitty products that are ultra processed, and now you're pumping, really going for like weight loss medication. Like I just think like a company of that size could have probably fundamentally changed the way we think about food, the way people build their plates. Could have changed how people live in their home lives, and could have promoted home cooking more. It just hasn't been the case. So yeah, I'm not their biggest fan, because I think as a business model, they're focused on profit over people.
Yeah, I would agree. And it doesn't give you the tools long term unless you've memorized every point of every food.
I just want to memorize every calorie of every food, and you don't.
Yeah. So we're gonna say it can work. But if you're going to put that much effort into learning a new system, maybe just learn about food.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which actually is a nice segue into the next option, which is trending for a lot of reasons that are not diet for weight loss purposes, but diet for health purposes, and that is the Mediterranean diet.
Yeah.
So if you think about, what you would envisage, and that's an important one because it's not necessarily exactly what people do eat, but what you envisage somebody who lives by the sea in the south of France or in Italy eating, lots of vegetables, fruit, lentils, beans.
Sai, can you get up
oil.
what the foods are? Because it's not there's loads, isn't there, foods like you say in the Mediterranean?
There's not really anything off the plate as such, apart from red meat. They don't want you to have too much red meat. You can even have a glass of wine every day. But the things that they ask you to limit is sweets, sugary drinks, and butter.
And butter. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so they want to say if you're going to get healthy fats, then that should be for things like olive oil and nuts, rather than saturated fats of butter. And I think that's probably why there are such good studies to show that you can achieve a 10% reduced risk of cardiovascular disease on this diet.
Wow.
So there are bold claims, but there is robust research to back that up.
It is classed as the healthiest diet in the world, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And lots of doctors who are legit will recommend that if you're going to go on any diet for your health, like this would be the one.
Yeah.
Not only because it is all of the things that we talk about, like it's all about whole foods, it's all about increasing the volume on your plate, fiber, fresh fruit and vegetables, lean sources of protein. But it's also something that people can keep up. It's not saying, you've got to have this weird diet plan of foods that you never normally eat. It's just normal, real food that's actually quite delicious.
I just want to, one of our team sent this quote over the other day, and it's just because you said like, your doctor recommends the Mediterranean diet, they're legit. So this quote says, if your doctor prescribes you medication without first asking about your diet, your sleep, your exercise routine, your water consumption, whether you have any structural issues, the stress in your life, you don't have a doctor, you have a drug dealer. And I think that's like you're just saying there, like, if your doctor says like, hey, recommends the Mediterranean diet, it's like, it's a pretty well researched and backed diet. And even we've got the food pyramid up here, and it's like daily servings, whole grains, breads, beans, nuts, fruits and vegetables. So these are things that you can have daily. In variable amounts would be like olive oil. A few times per week would be fish and seafood. Daily to weekly, eggs, cheese. Is that poultry?
Yeah.
Yogurt, and then monthly or small amounts, meats and sweets. Oh, so meats is really...
Red meats.
Is that red meats?
Yeah.
I'm surprised fish and seafood is a few times per week.
Yeah, it does depend which source you look at. So
right, yeah.
Often they'll say, that would be one of your main sources of protein would be fish. But obviously you should only limit fatty fish to a couple of times a week.
Yeah. And do you see in like what type of diet are people typically doing in like Japan and stuff? Because I know that's heavily in fish.
Yeah, probably very similar, to be honest. When we looked at it for the Blue Zones episode, it is very much around vegetables and whole foods. They eat a lot more soy-based products, which isn't part of the Mediterranean diet. Yeah. They don't have olive oil, but I don't know what kind of oil they use. They probably do have some kind of oil, sesame maybe. But I mean, the point of this is not necessarily for weight loss. So it is really well researched and supported for improvements in health and reduction in all-cause mortality. It's good for cognitive decline, mental health, loads of robust evidence for those areas. But when it comes to weight loss, it's not designed for that purpose.
Yeah.
If, again, you eat a really standard American diet with lots of processed food, there's a good chance you will lose weight if you start eating like this. And there is one strong meta-analysis that shows an average weight loss of nearly 2 kilos without trying when people tried the Mediterranean diet.
It's most of the things that we talk about. It's a predominantly whole foods diet.
Yeah.
Where they want you to like limit, sweets quite considerably, considering to like, we might say to some people like, hey, if you want to have a bar of chocolate, most days it's fine as long as it's a small percentage of your calories, but the Mediterranean diet's a little bit more strict when you're having like nuts or fruit as your snacks. So yeah, I think most people would see benefits and probably overall calorie reduction because it may be harder to overeat on those foods, but still.
And you're going to be more full because you're eating whole food, you're eating healthy fats at each meal, you're eating protein. It might not be from red meat, but you're encouraged to eat foods like beans and lentils and nuts.
Full of nutrients.
You might not have been eating before, so you're going to feel a lot more satiated. And it is going to help you feel like you're having a lifestyle shift rather than being on a diet.
Yeah.
So for those reasons, it makes sense that people just feel better, they have more energy, they move a bit more, and it just naturally becomes this transition. So there is a natural weight loss for a lot of people that do it. And this meta-analysis that I was talking about, actually, if they calorie controlled at the same time, then the average weight loss was 4 kilos. So that's about 8 to 10 pounds.
Wow.
So that is a significant amount without going on some crazy restrictive diet where you can't eat at certain times.
And you'll feel great. There's no doubt. I think if most people listening went on a Mediterranean diet, report back in a month, you will feel probably pretty fantastic. Yeah. Just because of the amount of nutrients. I think it's the same with fasting and Weight Watchers, and the Mediterranean diet's got to be up there from the health standpoint. But like calorie control has to be put in place. So, you know, if you go like, oh, I can eat nuts, and when you eat a full bag of pistachios, it's like, all right, yeah, well, there's 1,500 calories down. You know, so you're still going to have to calorie control, and there will still be certain foods that you could overconsume on quite easily. But for the most part, most of the foods are going to be really satiating, full of nutrients, and they're going to make you feel great.
And because of there being whole foods, it's going to be a lot harder to overeat calories than the processed foods that you might be used to. So overall, this one's probably a bit of a thumbs up from us.
It is, yeah, 100%. Yeah. And even if you don't fully want to follow the diet, you could probably look at it and take, even if you just got parts of it and apply it to your diet and see positive outcomes.
Yeah. And you are more likely to maintain the diet than any other kind of fad diet. Like when you finish doing a Weight Watchers diet, you just want to be done with counting points. If you've made the transition to a Mediterranean diet and that's just the food that you buy now when you go to the shops, you're much more likely to keep the weight off and to keep eating in that way.
100%.
Okay, so next up we have keto / low carb. And I didn't want to just focus on keto because I just think keto is so flipping extreme. And the low carb kind of
ties into like Atkins as well a little bit.
So Atkins, South Beach, Dukan, paleo to an extent kind of comes under that. But let's talk about keto itself to start with, because that's where this all kind of came from, this idea that, well, if you eat too much sugar or carbs in general, then you can't use them all, so your body's going to store that energy as fat. So if we just don't eat as much carbs, then you're going to lose fat. Yeah. Sounds like it makes sense.
It does sound, and I think that's the issue sometimes when you listen to so many people on social media. What they say, it makes sense, but then there's just like, it's just weaving in with a lot of bullshit or the certain parts that are missed. So I think just, like when it comes to losing weight, it's always about energy reduction or calorie reduction. And often when people cut out a full macronutrient, like if you just went to the supermarket or the shops and was like, right, I can't buy carbohydrates. Like instantly, like when you're going down the aisles, that's a lot of foods that is just like, no, like fruit, veg, bread, pasta, potatoes, like just rice, just no, like chocolate, biscuits, you know.
Actually, almost every aisle that isn't fresh food.
Yeah.
There's going to be a few products on each aisle that you could have, like peanut butter. I'm struggling to think of anything else.
Yeah, you're basically, limited to like all your meats and proteins, your fishes, and like high fat foods. You know what I mean? So it's so what people find then is they're eating like high protein, high fat diets, and as we've spoken about, on this podcast before, like when you're eating that much protein, you're just so full, you're so satiated, and you've made massive calorie reduction. Most of the foods that you've got, you're not going to go like, oh, I just can't wait to eat an extra chicken breast at like 8 p.m. at night after you've had your dinner. You know what I mean? Normally you're going, oh, I want the chocolate bar or the ice cream or something highly palatable, and that isn't the case on this sort of diet. So, like for most people, the reason it works is it just cuts off like the decisions. It doesn't cut off the decisions. It just cuts out a whole food group, and you naturally go into a calorie deficit.
Yeah. And if you're a very all or nothing person, this might actually play into your tendencies very well whilst you're in the all mode.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point.
If you're in like all guns blazing, I am on this diet, you are going to see that drop off.
Yeah.
Because of what you just said, like everything else is off the table. Like you can't eat any chocolate or whatever because that is black and white, not allowed.
And you'll drop so much water too.
Yes.
So like 1 gram of carbs holds about 3 to 4 grams of water or 4 to 5. It's something around that. So in that first week or two, you'll see rapid weight loss because you'll lose all the water and you'll start to lose weight from being in a calorie deficit. So again, while you're in that all tendency, fantastic. It's more when you get into the
Yeah, when you get to like day 4 of keto flu, where you just feel cranky and tired and headaches and just rubbish because your body is not designed to operate without glucose. So glucose is your body's preferred energy source. It's what your brain likes to run on. It's what your muscles like to run on. You can run without it, hence why keto exists. And there is a process called ketosis, which is where you burn fat for energy. So you can do it. But it's actually really quite hard for your body to burn fat for energy. And if you think about it in terms of evolution, that makes sense. Why would your body want to tap into these energy sources it's got for like emergency backup? That's what our caveman ancestors had fat stores for. So it's going to do that as a last resort. It'd rather try and get it from anywhere else. Like you said, your glycogen stores in your muscles or what's in your bloodstream, that's going to be its first choice. So if you just force it into ketosis, it's hard work and it's doing something it doesn't really want to do. So it's then when people tend to break.
And you go into the nothing.
The nothing.
And then what do you say? Even if you
go wild.
Yeah, you go absolutely wild. So you come home one night, you're feeling a bit of keto flu, or you're just feeling horrible, low energy. And even if you managed 4 days, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, eventually if you're in that all mentality and you switch to nothing, the real disaster happens here, because you come home one night, your husband's ordered a pizza, you smell the pizza, you've had a hard day. Next minute, you slam back the pizza, you go, sod it, you have a bottle of wine, you get the Ben and Jerry's out, you do whatever else, you jump on the scales the next day, you're like 10 pounds up. Like, no joke. And people are like, what was the point? Like, I give up. Like, that nothing mentality kicks in.
10 days of misery for nothing.
Yeah. And like most of that will be but water. You would have still likely lost a bit of weight. But they're just seeing that scale jump the next day and probably how you feel. You'll probably still feel sick the next day because your body's just gone like, oh, I've had no carbs for 10 days and now I've just had all the carbs in, 2 hours. So there'll be a big crash and it will massively affect your psychology and your mindset. And then you probably will give up, which, for us, trying to get people to successfully lose weight and keep it off, this roller coaster and this all or nothing mentality, like it's just, keto has just got there's so many red flags all over it.
And on that note, there are actually big advocates of keto that have now kind of retracted their hardcoreness, if that's even a word. So just the big people in our industry who were always very hardcore about it, people like Thomas DeLauer, he used to just eat like steak for breakfast. He'll now have some raspberries with his steak. And Paul Saladino, the carnivore MD, has actually come out and said long-term ketosis is probably not a good thing for human beings to do.
It's wild. Like, I just again, it's like another one of those things where you struggle. I'm like, I appreciate the open-mindedness to change your mind and to start actually promoting better health outcomes for people, as in like, hey, he has like a mainly, meat and fats diet, and now he's like bringing fruit into the mix and honey, and that's working better for him, and he's seeing that in his bloods. But this guy wrote a book on doing the carnivore diet. Yeah, just the carnivore diet, which sold thousands and thousands of copies, got thousands of reviews, and it's still available on Amazon. So you just look at it and go, like, if you truly believed in that and that book could cause harm, you'd pull that, and you would retract your statements and try and get in touch with everyone who's purchased that book, because you've now come across the idea that like, hey, being in full-time ketosis or doing a carnivore diet, not the best for health outcomes.
Yeah. And so I think as much as it might work for some people, and anecdotally, most of us probably know somebody that's tried it and lost a bunch of weight. I know somebody who, I think this is easier for guys actually. Everyone I know that's tried it and stuck with it has been a guy.
Yeah, that's the same for me.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I know somebody who lost, I don't even know what it is in kilos, but like 6 stone doing it. And he found it super easy because,
we should try and translate that. What's 6 times 14? 84. 84 pounds. Yeah, cheers, guy. Glad we got you here. Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot.
Yeah, 84 pounds.
And he said he found it easy, but I think it's because he was eating, quite a high fat diet anyway. He just, from his like bacon roll in the morning, just took the bread away. Yeah. So he didn't have a massive shift. And then for him, he's like, well, I don't mind eating like this. He's not particularly active either. So he doesn't, I'm imagining how I would struggle with the energy to work out and stuff like that if I didn't have carbs. I digress. Anyway, it does work for some people. We all know somebody that's tried it. However, it's hard to stick to. High fat foods aren't great when it comes to health if you're just eating saturated fats, which is a lot of what this is going to end up being. You're not just going to eat plates of avocado and what we would inverted commas say good fats. So it can be difficult to get a healthy balance. And you would genuinely still want to probably monitor your calories longer term, because as much as it's hard to eat too much meat because you get really full, actually we're talking about high fat as well, not just cutting out carbs. So that's what true ketosis is.
Yeah.
And it's easy to overeat on fat because it's very calorie dense.
Yeah. Again, you got to be mindful of your calories. And I think it's just like with any of these diets that you go through, like anything that seems quite extreme, there's possibly going to be a cost to that. You might be able to get some sort of like short-term results, whether that's short-term weight loss, but there may be a unintended consequence of doing that for a long period of time. And we've seen this in the past where like it kind of falls into this like keto side of things. There was like the bulletproof coffee, which was like putting slabs of butter in your coffee.
Coconut oil in your coffee.
Yeah, and the amount of doctors that seen people come in and like, oh, yeah, I've been drinking bulletproof coffee for the past 3 years. And I was like, yeah, you're like cholesterol and LDL and HDL are fucked. And it's like, oh, and it's like, yeah, you've done some irreversible damage. So, you've always got to like approach with caution. And I think
like, if it sounds weird, it's probably because it's weird.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like these like ideas of like, mainly eating whole foods, eating lots of fruits and vegetables, it's just like the pretty like, maybe not every fruit and vegetable will agree with you. Maybe not every meat you'll enjoy, but like most of the time they're going to be like good solid principles to follow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Which brings us on to our last contender on today's list, which is the opposite, and that is vegan/plant-based. So is it vegan January or vegan? January?
Vegan, yeah, is that right? Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Like, oh, I'll just go on a vegan diet for January, lose some of the extra pounds from Christmas.
And obviously, veganism started for more ethical reasons, not health reasons. But I've definitely seen a swing in the last couple of years of people doing it because of health expectations, I suppose, and in the hope that they will lose weight.
Yeah.
And again, you can kind of see a nugget of truth. You can see why people would think that would be the case, because if you go from eating a standard diet and you do eat lots of like saturated fat heavy foods like red meats and butter and cheese, and all of that's off the table, and you can only eat tofu and vegetables. Yes, you are probably going to lose weight.
Yeah.
However, there are so many fake meats and vegan cheeses and all this processed alternatives available that I do think a vegan diet now, compared to let's say like in the 80s, we're talking completely different ball game.
Yeah, very highly processed.
Right. And so if you were to say, oh, if I was to eat a 1980s vegan diet, would I lose weight? Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Like it would be very hard for you to overeat calories when all you can eat is plants because they just don't contain that much.
No, it's a high volume of food.
Yeah. And so if you want to go old school vegan, you probably are going to lose weight. The thing that you just want to be mindful of is you also need to keep an eye on things like calcium, vitamin D, B12, which you're going to struggle to get without having animal products.
You will, won't you? You are going to become nutrient deficient in some of those micronutrients and possibly have to go and supplement them elsewhere.
Yeah, and even maybe iron. You can get iron from plants, but it is harder. And protein is a lot harder to get as well.
Like most vegans who you speak to are either going to really struggle to get, the amount of protein that they need in their diets, or are using, some sort of vegan protein powder to really help get that up, because so many of the foods that they're looking to use are just high in carbohydrates, fiber, and fats. So it's like, they can maybe get the protein in, but it's coming with a lot of extra calories. And also it's really hard to eat that amount of food. So from a weight loss standpoint, you could be like, oh, right, like I'm eating so much food. But I think when people talk about like being a foodie or being, super gluttonous with food or really enjoying food, like a lot of the foods you're probably thinking of are more highly palatable foods that you can overeat on. You try and put someone like a vegan diet or a whole foods diet and watch them try and like overeat on that. Like your natural satiety levels will just kick in and you will get very full very fast.
Although one thing I would say is vegan food, old school vegan food.
Old school.
Is so delicious. Because in my experience, you have to go to quite a lot of effort to make vegetables sexy.
Come on, Stacey, how do you make your vegetables sexy?
So you have to like roast them or like use spices and seasonings. And so actually a well-cooked vegan meal can be way more delicious than just like banging some chicken and vegetables on a plate, which is easy to do because you're kind of relying on the taste of the meat, for example. So I definitely say there are pros to this. However, plant-based is more the kind of modern equivalent, I would say, where plant-based whole foods is the nice catchy term for like the 2024, 2025 version of old school veganism, where it's all around whole foods and we're not having that like fake meat. What were those burgers called?
Impossible Burgers.
Impossible Burgers, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, everything we talk about when it comes to like ultra processed foods, if you think about making, you know, fake meat or this sort of like ultra processed vegan cheese, you know, it's not a whole food product. It didn't exist, as we said, like 250 years ago. And by the way, I think some of these foods will advance and may become healthier in the future, but we're not there yet.
No. The other thing with whole food plant-based is it's plant-based, not plant-only. So there'll be a lot of people who follow this who will have eggs occasionally, or once a week they'll have some fish. So it's not like those rigid black and white rules. And so for that reason, again, it falls more into the thumbs up camp because you can negate some of these deficiencies and make sure you're getting a more balanced diet by being a bit more flex.
And that plays into like not being that all or nothing, having that all or nothing mentality. It's like, hey, look, I don't ethically agree with, you know, maybe people eating fish or meat or whatever else. It's like, okay, but like kind of do need it as a part of my diet, so I'm going to reduce the amount that I have. So like, hey,
get like high quality meat.
Yeah, and like maybe it's not like factory farmed or whatever else. You know, you're buying organic or buying from a local farm or whatever else. And it's like, okay, so you're reducing your impact that you're having and where you're sourcing your food from is in a more ethical sort of sense. So it's like that there are steps that you can take, and yeah, like that's it. Like it gets so tribal. Like I guess sometimes the way like religion can get, like diets can get like that, and like veganism can get like that. It's like, well, you're not a real vegan if you eat eggs, and it's like, okay, you know what I mean?
Honey, I didn't realise I made a dessert for one of my friends who's vegan with honey in, and he asked me for the recipe halfway through eating it, and I listed it off and I said honey, and he was like, oh.
I
felt so bad.
I bet you did, but like, why honey? I mean, I guess I feel like that's in the same camp of like
keeping the bees captive. I don't.
Oh, God.
We're probably gonna get some people messaging us and telling us. But I felt so bad.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it wasn't intentional. You know what I mean? No. But it's like eggs as well, isn't it? Like eggs aren't going to become a chick unless they're fertilized by a.
Yeah, unless you keep a cockerel.
Yeah, exactly. So like the eggs are just gonna go to waste, and there's no way every egg is fertilized. You know what I mean?
Actually, so, what does happen to the eggs? If you do in the wild.
Come on, Si. In the wild. In the wild. The chickens in the wild.
What do the foxes just come and eat them? They would just eat the chickens.
I
really need to know now. What happens to the eggs in the wild that are unfertilized?
Yeah, it's just because I mean, yeah. So like, you know, stuff like that. I'm going like, well, you're not really causing any harm. Like the chickens laid the egg, it hasn't been fertilized. Like maybe it was just going to go to waste. So it's just like that seems. And same with honey. You know what I mean? I think what we're trying to say is that like if an egg isn't fertilized, which not all eggs are going to be, like surely we're not causing any harm to the chickens and eggs are. I feel like eggs are a superfood. You know what I mean? Loads of protein, loads of healthy fats. So yeah, if you want to be mainly plant-based and incorporate a little bit of, you know, fatty fish and eggs, that's certainly going to help with some of those nutrient deficiencies that we've just mentioned.
Yeah. And again, this is one where the research does show, even if you're not trying to lose weight, you probably will, because you're just shifting to whole foods, volume, high fiber. So there was a 12-month study in New Zealand where no calorie counting or anything, people who moved on to a whole food plant-based diet saw an average reduction in their BMI of 4 points.
Shit,
yeah,
that's huge.
And 26 pounds.
Wow.
Over a year, without trying to count the calories or anything.
But this is all we keep saying on this podcast. Whole foods, or majority whole foods. And it's just like, so you can just see the impact that it has.
Yeah.
And we know for some people going on a 100% plant-based diet or 100% whole foods diet is like not what they want to do. And that's why we're saying if like 80-90% of your calories come from those whole foods, still enjoy a little bit of what you love and you're going to get basically all of the benefits.
Yeah. So that's another one that goes in the thumbs up camp.
Yes.
I think. So hopefully that's given you guys a bit of an overview. If you were searching on Google, top 5 diets for weight loss, those would have come up. So we've tried to be as unbiased as possible and actually lay down, like, will they work or not? But ultimately, how do you choose the right diet for you?
You choose the right diet for you by a little bit of experimentation and finding what works for you. There will be certain foods that don't agree with you and do. But for most people, you know, getting mainly whole foods in the diet, making sure they're getting adequate protein, are going to benefit you. You know, lots of fruits and vegetables. You know, we've seen that, like, it was like, what was it, 5 fruit and veg a day, or 5 veg and 5 fruit, which a lot of people are like, how do you get that much in? But sometimes it's actually just small portions to make sure you're getting those nutrients in. So it's really about finding what works for you, what works for your lifestyle. You got to remember, like, a diet is personal and individual. Like, Stacey likes fish and broccoli for breakfast. I couldn't think of anything worse, but apparently quite a few people agree with you when we put that clip out. And, you know, like, Western diets are very like eggs and cereal and beige and, you know, breakfast style foods versus, you've said many times, you go to other parts of the world and
like curry for breakfast, noodles.
Yeah. So, you know, it really is about, like, understanding there's no one size fits all, but there are some through lines or principles that work for most people. And that's, as we just said, some sort of calorie control, get enough protein, lots of color.
Yeah. And the main thing is, whatever you embark on, if you're going to start one more of those potentially 60 diets you're going to do in your life, is this actually going to be sustainable this time? Is this going to be something that you know in 3 or 4 days' time you're going to be hating life and you're going to quit?
Yeah.
Because if it is, just don't even start. Like, don't put yourself through the torture and the failure and the shame and everything that you know comes with it. Just look for something, like, go back through this episode and the thumbs up list. Go for something like that, which might not give you such rapid results. Like, some of these crazy diets are going to promise you the world, but you're not going to be able to stick to it. It's going to feel miserable. And when you do get to the end of that diet, then what?
Yeah, I think the big one is here, and I know we've used this word flippantly throughout the podcast, which is a diet by definition is just the foods that we habitually eat. So we're all on a diet till the day we die. From the day you're born to the day you die, you're on a diet. Now, the diet you're on now is either currently serving your health and weight loss goals, or it's not. And if it's not, then it just means the foods that you habitually eat do not serve the life that you want to live. When you go on a quote unquote diet, or one of the ones we've mentioned here, if that just doesn't work, and then you all you'll do when you finish is revert back to what you know. So all you have to do, and it's a very logical approach, which is difficult because food is wrapped in so much emotion. But if you just start to make small, consistent, positive changes about your education around food, about your understanding around food, and just keep getting a little bit better, like, over, even if it takes 3 years to figure it out, you've then got a lifetime of bliss when it comes to your diet, which you will be on forever. So I think it's really just taking that emotion of, like, you have to fix it now. Like, it has to be done in like